But one of the stories that stands out to me when I think of you and when I've researched you in the past, going back to the initial episode, is a remarkable story about growth yourself. You know, you've developed quite a career in public speaking, teaching a number of topics that we've discussed in this and the previous episode. But there's a particular story for your birth into public speaking that I'd like for you to share with me, because I think it's a fantastic story.
I am the most unpublic speaking speaker, if I could use those kind of words, because I actually have...
Hey everybody, welcome back. And speaking of welcoming back, we have our first returning guest on the podcast today. David Allen is back. He's back for part 2. Body language expert, leadership coach, police reservist and public speaker, and published author. In this episode, we spend some time focusing more exclusively on leadership. And David has this to say about leadership. I have learned one indisputable fact about leadership. Where leaders lead well, people thrive, and where leaders lead poorly, people suffer. Essentially, success or failure is dependent on the quality of leadership. So if you're interested in improving yourself as a leader, then this is a great episode to listen to, because it gives you some fundamental and actionable steps to start to make changes to your life in a positive way today. And stick around for the full episode, because the episode takes a startling twist, a little piece of information and a revelation on David's journey that blew my mind and has reshaped the way that I think about self-improvement and challenging my own personal boundaries, expectations, and limiting self-beliefs. Please like, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Dave Allen, welcome back. You are the first returning guest on the Expect Performance podcast. So congratulations, it's the first time for the show. So welcome back.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for the invite. I really enjoy our time together. I really enjoyed it last time, and then the moment you invited back, I was like, I'll grab it with both hands. So really had a good time.
My absolute pleasure. So the first episode that we did was on decoding body language, and it was such a hit. People found it so interesting and so applicable to their lives, and how they can use that to their benefit in their relationships and in the private, closed environment, as well as in the workspace. But today we're here to talk about leadership, because I've read your book, Leadership in the Trees, and I found that it to be very insightful, very to the point, and very applicable to how does one become a leader and the importance of leadership. So let me get straight into it. Why is leadership important?
It's a topic I really enjoy looking at. I mean, people actually don't fully appreciate that leadership happens and leadership matters. I mean, even in your household environment, the older sister kind of needs to convince the younger brother that he only needs 5 minutes in the bathroom so she can take 55 minutes in the bathroom, kind of idea. This idea that if you're going out with your mates, how do you convince your friends to watch the movie you want to watch instead of the movie they want to watch? You know, this leadership thing happens every day, and very often we're not even aware of it. But added to that, I kind of look at, if you open any newspaper or look at any news feed, I mean, what jumps out at us is that the absolute failure of leadership.
Yeah.
Like every story we kind of see, at the end of it, we kind of get to look back at the story, because by the time we read it, you know, it's kind of looking at it, you know, after the fact. So it is easy to criticize. But very often you look at it going, but surely you could see this. I mean, this is this blatant, you know, mistakes. I mean, where was the leadership in that situation? I think a lot of people have kind of don't fully appreciate the idea that where leaders lead well, people live. And where leaders lead badly, people die. I mean, everything rises and falls on leadership. And it's kind of the one topic that we understand that in a way, and when we realize how important it is, we also then realize we actually haven't spent a lot of time learning about it and teaching about it and training about it.
Yes.
That there's a lot of leadership books out there, But as you alluded to, is it practical? Can I apply it to my day-to-day life? How do I actually bring this leadership concept into my day-to-day life?
Yeah. So you've spent a lot of time training students and people in your camps on the importance of leadership and what it means to be a leader. So let's start with that. What does it mean to be a leader? What are the hallmarks or trademarks that we should be looking to aspire to?
Perfect. I've got 2 lives that I lead. I run leadership programs at a camp called Camp Solomon, so we do leadership courses for school kids, and then I'm a police reservist, and this year is my 29th year in the police. So again, I kind of see leadership on both sides.
Yeah.
And what is very interesting to me was on the students level, why would students listen to that kid on this activity, but the very next activity they listen to that kid? Or why do they listen to that kid and he actually knows nothing, but they seem to follow him blindly into a bad, and you kind of go, well, what is this leadership thing really all about? And one of the exercises I kind of do if I'm with a group, and it was on my first chapter of my book, is understanding what leadership is. And when I kind of ask a group, what is leadership? Give me the adjectives, so what characteristics make up a good leader? I often get, someone that's honest, someone that's got integrity, someone that's got a clear vision, someone that's good communicator, and they kind of give me at least 12 different adjectives of a leader. And all of those 100%, and they're very accurate. And then I kind of stop and I say, okay, cool, name me a couple of leaders, whether they're alive today, they're dead, you like them, you don't like them, and I get a couple of names of leaders. And every time I run this activity, I always get Nelson Mandela on the board, knows good leader, and then I always get Adolf Hitler on the board.
Yeah.
Which is kind of curious because they're 2 worlds apart, But when I ask you to name me leaders, these guys are mentioned. Then I run through the exercise where I ask the students, okay, well, we're going to see if we can rate that adjective with the leader. And Mandela will kind of get all of them. He'll get, integrity and honest and good communication, and he kind of gets all those adjectives, patient and understanding and fair. He gets all those adjectives, and would score like 12 out of 12 on those adjectives. And then I'll look at Adolf Hitler, and he doesn't get fair, he doesn't get patient, he doesn't get honesty, he gets communication, so he might get 1 or 2, he gets passion, he gets 1 or 2 things out of the 12. So Mandela kind of scores a 12 out of 12, and Hitler gets like a 2 or 3 out of 12. But then I pretty much ask the question of, who would you rate as the greater leader? Not the nicer person, not the nicer person, and not which person whose moral values you respond to, but who had the greatest influence over people, over culture, that kind of aspect. And it's always interesting that no matter when I do this, when I get the raise of hands, Hitler kind of gets it every time. Not the nicer person, we all kind of understand that, but when we think about 80 years after his death, you still got people that kind of follow him. Mm-hmm. And you kind of look at millions atrocities in his name, all that kind of, and you kind of realize that a lot of people would put him as not a great leader, but as a leader. Mm-hmm. But then it kind of poses the problem of why is it that the person that scores the least, 2 out of 12, we would rate him above a 10 out of 12 leader, or even a 12 out of 12 leader. And it kind of got me on the question of, well, what is leadership really all about? Mm-hmm. And what I noticed, even within the kids and everything, it kind of comes down to 3 main points. Your one is your vision. It's what do you want to see happen? What do you want to see in a situation? Now, if I had to ask you to name me a couple of leaders, and you would straight away know what their vision is. You know what they stand for. Whether you agree with them or not, that's a different conversation. But the moment I mention a leader's name, you actually know what they stand for. Yeah. So the first idea is your vision. Now, your vision as a day-to-day leader doesn't necessarily have to be world domination. Mm. Your vision is to get your baby brother out the bathroom. Your vision is to convince your friends to watch the movie you want to watch. Your vision is to convince your wife that we should rather eat this for supper. It's what do you want to see in a situation? And I kind of say to the students, if we were playing paintball, and was paintball to the death kind of thing, so really high stakes paintball, and I was the leader, and the group had to say, so Dave, how are we going to attack the other team? And I had to go, I don't know. Would you want to follow me into battle?
No,
You know?
definitely not.
I'm patient, I'm fair, I've got most of those qualities, but I've got absolutely no idea how we're going to achieve that objective. I don't know what we're going to do. So without the vision, you don't want to follow me. So the first thing is your vision. What do you want to see happen in a situation? Your second point is your ability to get people excited about your vision. Okay. Again, that same paintball scenario. Dave, how are we going to attack the other team? Well, if 3 of us go on the left and 2 of us circle around the right, and the rest of us, we advance up the middle, it might work. You want to follow me into battle?
No.
You know, I've got a wonderful idea and it's a decent strategy.
Yeah.
But I can't get you excited about it. You know, could Hitler get people excited? Mandela get people excited?
Absolutely.
Julius Malema get people excited? You know, Donald Trump get people excited? So again, putting the politics part aside, you actually realize straight away, the moment you hear Trump talk, you know exactly what he stands for. Build a wall or whatever his vision is.
Make America great.
Make
again.
America great, and he gets people excited. Again, putting the politics aside. And you kind of, all the leaders we look at, we know exactly where they stand, and they've got this ability to get you excited and motivated around. The third point I find, especially when I noticed this within kids, was your yes people. Now, yes, any leader doesn't want, any decent leader doesn't just want yes people that'll follow them blindly. Actually, a good leader has got people that gives them counterflow kind of arguments. So at least he can look at things from a different angle. But the yes people I'm talking about is initially you need someone to back you up. If I'm running and if I tell the kids, right, you're going to go climb over a Chinese wall. You know, it was one of the activities we do at camps. They've got to get the whole group up and over a 3-meter wall. The group will end up following someone who says, guys, I've got a good idea and this will work. But he's always got to convince at least one other person that this is the right plan.
Yes.
Because he needs one person to say, hey, why don't we go with Dave's idea? Then the group starts to, so I need that initial yes person.
Yeah.
So, and again, if you think of all your top leaders currently and throughout history, they've always got 1 or 2 strong supporters that support them no matter what.
Yeah.
They've kind of got that, they get it going. And when I do stuff with corporates and that, so ideally if you want to change, if you wanted to introduce a uniform or a cap into your corporate wear for argument's sake, so that's your vision, you want to change the uniform, you got to get people excited, say, hey, these are the pros and cons. Then I would look around for people that enjoy wearing caps. And I'd try to go up to them beforehand and say, hey, what do you think of this idea of a cap? And I kind of have the argument/discussion with them and get them on my side. Once I've convinced them, I'll ask another person on it. Then when I go into my board meeting and I say, guys, why don't we change the uniform? We're going to bring in caps and get people excited about it. Then I've got someone that says, we love that idea. Yeah, let's go with that. You see how momentum starts to build.
Yes.
And very quickly I get to convince a group.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for example, I'm on camp at the moment, but I get a chance to get away, and I know I'm going to have a long day, I'm traveling, and normally tonight, being Wednesday night, Wednesday night, sorry, I lost my days there for a second, I'm in charge of dinner. Mm-hmm. So because I'm going to have a long day, and so there, I know I'm not going to be in the mood to be cooking, tonight and Wednesday night, so my vision for dinner tonight is going to be pizza.
Yeah.
My problem is I've got to convince my wife. And she's going to be like, hey, we need a couple more healthy meals, and that's going to be an issue. So I've got to say, hey, babe, it's going to be awesome. We can all sit down. No one has to do dishes. We sit as a family. You can just eat out the box. It's pretty healthy because there's like a tomato in there somewhere. And
yeah.
I'm kind of...
Bacon, high protein.
Bacon, exactly that. Bacon, high protein. I'm going to get excited about the fact that as a family unit, we can enjoy pizza. My yes people are my 2 daughters. I've got a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old. Because I'm going to go after them first. I'm going to say, hey, guys, do you guys want pizza for supper? Yeah. Cool, let's go ask mom. And then we're going to go up the stairs, and I'm going to say, babes, why don't we have pizza? It's going to be awesome. There's a tomato, it's healthy, bacon, high protein. And my 2 little minions are going, pizza. What are we going to end up having for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
And this is the basic, simple kind of way of illustrating this idea that the basics of leadership is get an idea, get people excited about it, and convince at least one other person. And what I noticed within camps, that was who people followed. People followed someone that did exactly that. The moment someone said, I know what to do, they convinced someone else it was the right thing, and someone else backed their play.
Yeah.
Then they could go forward, which also becomes a bit scary for us, because we can be, and we have been, misled by leaders, because we love the sales pitch. We love the way they get us excited. We kind of trust someone else that said, yeah, we believe in you. And we haven't looked at, is this person a Mandela kind of leader? Or is this person a Hitler kind of leader? Does this person, are they fair? Do they have patience? Do they have all the good qualities that make a decent leader?
Yeah.
And this is where I'm kind of going to say the basics of it. So a good leader would have all those qualities, but you still got to understand that you've got to at some point have your idea, get people excited about it, and get your core people to carry on pushing through.
Yeah.
And that what I find has been the basics of leadership. Whatever I've seen, every situation that I've seen it, police operations I've seen. I mean, very often I've kind of seen a captain in charge of a group, but he wasn't in charge. It was the sergeant that was actually calling the shots. Because again, he said, guys, this is the better way of doing it, motivated people, and he ended up coming up with that operational plan.
Yeah. So as you were speaking, I was thinking of personal experience. And I used to work at a high school, doing the strength and conditioning for the high performance center. And my first day on the job, and this is like, it's starting to make sense now to me, those three elements that you've educated us on. So I met the first team rugby squad on the field, and it was my opportunity to introduce myself, etc. But now I'm coming onto their turf. You know, there's the seniors, they're the grade 11s and the grade 12s. I'm the newbie, I'm on their turf now. And the first thing that was, okay, guys, do a couple of laps, just a slow jog as a squad around the field, and then as your warm up, and then we'll get into the field session. And there were obviously some leaders within that group that decided that they had a different vision for that run, because there's a building on the far corner of the field, and they went, and as they got to that building, they all disappeared behind the building, and they didn't come back for about 5 minutes. So then I was left stranded on this field, and that it was a test, you know. So some leaders within that group had galvanized enough of their yes men to say, okay, guys, this is the new vision for this run.
Here we go.
We're going behind that building. We're going to see what this guy is made of. And basically, eventually, they all decided, okay, this is enough time behind the building. They're going to come out, and then they completed their run, very happy with themselves. And they got back to me, and then I thought, okay, well, I've got to put a stick in the sand here, a line in the sand, because otherwise this is just going to be an absolute shit show. So I said, okay, guys, cool, thank you very much. That's the end of the training session. This is not what this squad is about. This is not what I'm about. You guys can pack it in. If you want to do your own training session, that's fine. For those of you that want to train, this is what I prescribe that you do. This was the plan for the session. You can do that you can do that now if you want, or you can do that any other time. But for me, I'm out. And then, oh no, sir, please don't. Da, 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 da. And then that was it, you know. But now it starts to make sense to me in hindsight with those three things. And then, so then my vision, then I was allowed to give them my vision, my values, what I stand for, and then they had a decision to make whether or not they wanted to then get in and get in behind that. And it was funny. One guy out of the whole squad came and apologized to me later that day. Said, "Sir, I'm very sorry for my actions." It was, and then that's another thing about leadership is you speak about accountability. And one boy out of that squad of it must have been about 40 rugby players came back and he took accountability for his actions, despite the fact that who knows, maybe he was the instigator, maybe he wasn't, maybe he was just complicit in it. But he decided that that was not what he stood for, and then he came back and he apologized after the fact. So how important, on that note, is accountability in leadership?
Accountability is absolutely crucial, especially if you want to advance as a leader. So what I generally notice is that, yes, if all those kids got called out, they actually wouldn't take accountability for themselves and say, well, they made a decision to run behind the building. They all would have pointed a finger.
Yeah.
You know, even though they did it wrong, they still, no, but it wasn't my fault. And a good leader actually says, hey, listen, no, I did well, so I'm prepared to take the glory. But if you're prepared to take the glory, you've got to be able to take the blame or the criticism.
Yeah.
And you're never going to improve unless you can honestly analyze something. I mean, I love the idea of an AA meeting, an AA setup. Like any drug addict or anyone coming through Alcoholics Anonymous, the first thing they push through is that you got to admit that you've got a problem, because we can't help you if you don't admit that there's a problem. And the same thing happens within leadership. Is if I can't admit that I've made a mistake, I'm going to carry on making the exact same mistakes. You need to actually say, hey, and own up to something and say, I made a decision, I did it, I'm sorry about that, and I can learn from my mistakes. I mean, my most valuable staff members are people that come to me and say, Dave, I messed up, before I even know that they messed up.
Really?
Because they come through and they explain, hey, I did this and this and this wrong, and I apologize. And now I can get in front of it, and I can kind of help to mitigate. And however, and I also know straight away that they know the mistake that they've made, so I know they won't make the same mistake a second time. You know, if I had to fire them straight away, the new person that comes in, chances are they're going to make the same mistake at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm just repeating this whole thing. So very often, I don't like firing people straight away for making a small mistake. I'd rather coach them for it, and I know they've owned up to it, so I know they're not going to make the same mistake again. But my most least valuable staff members are people that, you know, I've got to find out that a mistake was made. Then when I come to everyone and say, hey guys, what went wrong? They just deny that they had any involvement in it whatsoever. Then I've got to spend more time trying to convince them, like, hey, hold on, you were actually in charge. You were the head of that project. It is because of your decision. And very often, because they're not the type of people that accept responsibility, they still deny it, they still deny it, they still deny it. But now that becomes a liability to me, because if you're not going to admit that you made a mistake, you're going to make the same mistake next week.
Yes.
Because you haven't seen it as a mistake. So I've generally found leaders and, you know, when school kids and corporates and businesses, people have actually succeeded when they've taken responsibility for something.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to hide behind someone else and blame someone else. It is hard to kind of point your finger at yourself. And that's when I often kind of say, hey, if you want to blame someone, that's wonderful. But there's 3 fingers coming straight back at you.
Yeah.
And a good leader said, yes, this went wrong. But a good leader will say, hey, what could I have done differently to have changed that outcome?
Yeah.
Because then I know I'm going to have a better outcome next time. But people that just purely blame someone else, there's no growth on their side.
Yeah.
So accountability to me becomes the most important point, you know, ever on growth as a student, growth as a leader. Because even from a student perspective, you can come in and blame the teacher all you like. The teacher didn't teach properly, and that's why I've got 40, and you can blame the teacher. But at the end of the day, it's like, hold on, but how much homework time did you put in? How much study time did you put in? Were you actually paying attention in class? When the teacher said, if you don't understand, come see me, have you once this whole year gone up to the teacher and said, please re-explain, I didn't quite get it? You know, have you Googled understanding this?
YouTube videos.
Have you tried to, you know what I mean? So if you've done none of that, how can you just say it's a teacher's fault? And again, if you just blame the teacher, you're never going to grow. If you take some responsibility and say, hey, yes, I've actually done more social media time than study time, now I can change it around.
Yeah.
Now I can put in more study time than social media time.
Yeah.
Now my grades are actually going to grow.
And I think the powerful point there is when you take accountability, you bring the power back to yourself as the individual. If you're consistently shifting blame and giving reasons why it's not your fault, then there's no effort on the individual's part to grow. You know, like you said, accountability is fundamental in personal growth. And it's the same thing in the gym, in my gym setup. People, when they're prepared to take accountability for the takeaway meals that they've had, or et cetera, they're far more likely to then get that out their system and then progress back onto healthier meals thereafter, rather than the ones who are blaming circumstances for why they had to get
Yes.
that takeout meal,
And then justify it.
and then justifying it. They're far lower down on the curve of progression than the
Yeah.
ones that are prepared to take accountability, purely behind the mindset of why they've made the mistake and what they intend to do going forward. When you take accountability, you take the power back to yourself, saying that I acknowledge that I made a mistake. At the same time, this is what I'm going to do to prevent it from happening again, because it's now within my grasp that I can improve, because I've taken it on myself, and then what are the steps that I can do to improve and to grow. But one of the stories that stands out to me when I think of you and when I've researched you in the past, going back to the initial episode, is a remarkable story about growth yourself. You know, you've developed quite a career in public speaking, teaching a number of topics that we've discussed in this and the previous episode. But there's a particular story for your birth into public speaking that I'd like for you to share with me, because I think it's a fantastic story.
I am the most unpublic speaking speaker, if I
Yes.
can use those kind of words, because I actually have a stutter.
Okay.
And when I was at school, when I was a teenager, I couldn't put two words together. I got a very bad stutter when I was a teenager. I actually couldn't run my English orals in front of the class. The teacher had to bring me off one side, do a one-on-one on my English orals, because I just couldn't put two words together. Even now, when I get nervous, I will start to stutter.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I battle doing TV interviews. It's actually taken me a lot just to do this, because I also battle straight away, because I'm nervous about, am I going to go back to my stuttering days? Am I going to mess it up? And I get very nervous, and then I start to stutter. If ever I'm giving a presentation, because I stutter very badly on my S's,
Yes.
words beginning with S, and especially if I've got to read. So I've got to stand up if I'm doing a church thing, for example, and I've got to read the lines from the Bible. So I'm talking, but I've got to come back and read. I actually battle. That's when I start to stutter. And if I'm the guest speaker at a place, I can give a whole talk, not a problem, because I've kind of, before the talk, I've got myself psyched up and I've worked myself, I've got my confidence levels up, and I can deliver that session. But if I'm in the audience and you had to quickly say, Dave, can we get your thoughts on this? And there was a lot of people around, because I quite haven't got my words ready, I would start to stutter. And I've got a lot of previous teachers that kind of look at what I do now for a living, public speaking, and even those old schoolmates kind of go, we just don't understand how it all, you couldn't put two words together and now you're a public speaker. And it comes back to when I was pretty much leaving school, when I was grade 12, I was very depressed. I was like, what am I going to do next year? I can't talk. It's hard to have any type of relationship because I'm stuttering. I can't actually talk properly. It's really hard to ask a girl out if you're stuttering on every second word. So from a relationship perspective, that was difficult. And I was like, how do I even get a job at McDonald's or at KFC or any type of, even a fast food restaurant? Because I'm not going to be able to say, do you want extra fries with that? I'm not going to, so what work prospects am I going to have? And I was feeling very depressed at the time. And I was in a town called Escort, and around the fire station, the Boswell-Walkie Circus always came once a year at the fire station and came through.
I remember those guys.
And I kind of came through, and I was looking at some of the animals at the back, and I can't remember where the circus started, what over or was now around the animals at the back. And I noticed that this big African elephant, one of the elephants that they had in the show, was kind of standing there, and there wasn't really a fence around him. There was like a small little tape so that people wouldn't go up to the elephant, so it was that demarcation, but it wasn't like a proper fence. And he was chained to something. It was like a wooden stick in the ground. It wasn't really something secure. And I remember thinking, like, this is like a huge health risk, health hazard. I mean, if something happens, that little toothpick literally that this elephant's trained to, and this little demarcation tape is not stopping this elephant from trampling all these people. And one-on-one, I could normally talk a little bit better, and I kind of went up to the trainer. I said, listen, I don't think someone's locked the elephant away correctly, kind of thing. And he explained to me how they train elephants within a circus environment. And they said, when the elephants come in as a calf, they are chained to something immovable. So the chain will go on and it's to a concrete thing and the elephant can't move. And as the elephant gets older, the moment you put the chain on, it assumes it's chained to something immovable and it stays right there because it doesn't think it can go anywhere. And that was what this guy explained to me. He said, so it's not a problem. That's why we could actually chain to a plastic chair. The elephant's not going to move once it's got that chain on. And it's only a temporary place. We put it there while we move out, so it'll just literally stay there during the duration of that show. And when he explained that, I realized I was like that African elephant. I mean, the Bible says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I've got so much potential. God's given me so much potential. Like this elephant who can go through oak trees, can literally walk through forest, but a toothpick's holding him back. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I can do all things. However, I'm scared of this and I'm scared of that, and I'm kind of holding myself back. And very often, some of the change that I had was mental change on myself. I kept on telling myself I would never amount to anything. I would never be able to do anything. So it was a mental chain. But it was also change that other people had placed on me. No, you will never be able to do this, or you will never be able to do this. And I was like that African elephant that had now been chained. I can do great things, but because I've got this mental block, I'm going nowhere.
Yeah.
And again, it was on that realization of it. I realized I needed to now try and do something about it. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to try and kind of overcome this. So I actually put myself in uncomfortable situations. I started doing youth, at church, the kids' church ministry, where I now had to talk to kids. And that was easier for me because I was bigger than them and they were smaller than me. So I naturally felt I had a bit more authority. So because I wasn't as nervous, I could talk better. But then I learned how to put my words together and start to flow. And then from there, I could progress into youth and teenagers. And again, I just got put into I placed myself in more and more challenging situations that I can work on just breathing, thinking it through, and overcoming my stuttering. Working police also helped because, again, I now had a bit of authority walking in a police uniform. People would straight away turn to look at you and see what you have to say. Initially, very scared, and I would start to stutter through. But as it grew, I started getting comfortable in policing environments, having awkward conversations, and I started getting comfortable doing youth. And that's how I got into, and then doing camps for kids, got used to giving talks to school kids, built my confidence up, and then from there progressed to adults. So it wasn't a matter of I stutter, now I don't. There is a bit of a progress. But I think so often, most of us, we know what has to be done. We just have this mental block about actually overcoming it. And a lot of us kind of wait for the right motivation to do something. And what I learned and what this whole exercise kind of taught me is that you don't take action because you feel motivated.
Yeah.
You actually feel motivated because you took action.
100%.
The moment you start, that's when you start, the motivation actually comes, and that's when it starts to come. I mean, it's like, you in the gym industry, how many new customers always come on a Monday? So it's like they got themselves sucked up. It's like Monday has to be the time. It's like, and initially they're scared, but the moment they start training, the moment they kind of get through that first week, because they took action, they get more and more motivated to carry on coming back. And no one comes to gym. You might have one person that pitches up for one day because they read a book about it, or they kind of listened to a Eye of the Tiger kind of song and got really ready for it. But then they lost that motivation very quickly. But the moment you take action, you actually get more motivated.
Yeah. And then it becomes a habit. You take action consistently enough over time, and then you start to change your identity. So that negative dialogue, that destructive dialogue internally that you spoke about earlier, then that starts to change, because now you've got evidence on the contrary. You've got evidence on the contrary that you can speak publicly, that you can communicate your thoughts clearly and concisely. You can go to gym, you can be healthier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you start to develop a much better self-image, because you go from a person who's, for example, I eat unhealthy things, I don't have healthy habits, I'm lazy, et cetera, that's their profile for themselves. And then all of a sudden there's enough evidence to suggest the contrary through taking action, that then that self-image starts to change. When it's like, actually, no, I'm the type of person that goes to the gym when I don't feel like it. I'm the type of person that only has 1 or 2 drinks when everybody else is going bananas, etc., etc., etc. Delaying gratification. And that's how ultimately sustainable change is created. And then you find yourself now on the other side of that, on podcasts and giving talks around the country and going to America and Switzerland and all the places. Crazy.
The talk box I'm comfortable with. The podcast, I'm still nervous. It's still not quite. So I am still, because that's the thing. I haven't overcome my stuttering. I've learned how to work with it and work through it. But I do still stutter every now and then.
Yeah.
When I get nervous about something, the words don't always flow. But again, I'm trying to challenge myself. So a part of this is actually me challenging myself, saying, Dave, you still battle in a radio setup or in a podcast setup. And I don't want to shy away from it.
Yeah.
I still want to come out and give it a go. If I do well, super. If I do badly, I'm going to learn from my mistakes. How do I do it better next time?
Yeah.
And it's literally, it's like a baby walking. It didn't go from crawling to start walking.
Yeah.
It literally got up and then fell down and then got up and then fell down. But us as parents, we're like, come on, you can do it. I mean, we would be almost horrified and heartbroken if our kids started walking, came through, fell down and thought, okay, this walking thing is just not for me, and just stopped.
100%.
It would break our hearts. And we like sitting there going, you can do this. And no one's judging because you messed up the podcast or you did something wrong. Give it a go. Try it out. And so that's been my philosophy lately, is just actually give it a go. Do something that scares you and push those personal boundaries and give it a go.
And that's how growth happens, eh?
Imagine what we could accomplish if we weren't scared of what other people thought. Because that's normally what holds us back so much, is that we're nervous about what other people are going to think. What is someone else going to say about this?
That was the big delaying factor in the podcast for me.
Okay, yes.
Is I cared too much about what people might think. What gives me the right to have my own podcast? What value do I have to add that might impact on other people positively?
Yeah.
And it took years to eventually get to the point where, okay, I'm doing it regardless. And something that I said in a previous episode was, you have to be prepared to benefit one person
Nice.
before you can have the privilege of impacting on thousands of people. If you're not prepared to do it because you only want to do it to impact the thousands of people, then you're really not in it for the right reasons. You know, are you in it for the journey of personal growth? Because this is also a skill development, learning how to speak, learning how to arrange a conversation.
Yeah.
Those are all skill sets that develop over time. That now, this will be, I think, episode 47. That had to be developed over time from episode 1. And that's also part of my growth journey.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing for me, I was reading something the other day that was saying that the number one fear that people have is, drowning's up there, and, spiders is really, really high, but the number one fear that people have is actually public speaking.
Yeah.
It's like the number one fear. And it's just this idea that, and yes, I do have that fear, but it's how do I overcome this? And it's by putting yourself in situations that build resilience to it.
Exactly.
Because yes, the first time is not going to be good, but now I've learned from my mistake, and it's accountability, taking it, and I just build resilience. I get better and better at it.
That's probably the best example of the ball and chain is public speaking.
Yes.
Because everybody can kind of relate to that, because it is, you're absolutely right, the number one fear.
Yeah.
And it's completely illogical. We all speak for a living. There's no risk. There's no risk of dying. You can get bitten by a spider and you could die. Yes. You could be in a plane that crashes and you could die, albeit very slim chance. But you're not going to die from public speaking. So there's no existential threat. So that is the perfect example of the ball and chain. That's things that you've put onto yourself or other people have put onto you. That is not something that you can do.
And people, it's one of the things we cover when we chat to our students during the debriefing evenings. You got this idea of BOLO, YOLO, you only live once. And that's when I kind of stop and I got to go, no, it's actually Yoda, you only die once.
Yeah.
We should be living every day.
I like that.
And what are you doing every day to actually, are you living your day? And part of that is trying different challenges, having different things. And if you mess up, if you fall down again, it's like a baby who falls. You get back up and carry on. Not one kid has ever said, that's it, time out, I'm never walking again. I gave it a go. This walking thing is not for me. It's overrated.
Yeah.
They literally, the most resilient, they get up and they carry on going. And then before long, they're running and going through. And I think that's the same thing for us. We do lose that baby aspect, the lessons we learn in the cradle in a way.
Yeah.
That we actually do have to keep on keeping on. We got to keep on going. And if you're not advancing, you are going to be going backwards.
Yeah.
And do something that scares you.
Yeah, that was something that I alluded to in a previous episode. I was inspired by our little boy. People must get tired of me talking about grace, and I squeeze him into every episode, it seems. But I did a podcast on my own, and it was 4 lessons that we can learn from children as adults. And that was one of the points, is the ability to be resilient. And it's only over time that we start to become burdened and weighed down by our own negative internal dialogue, and perhaps let other people's opinions impact that as well, to talk ourselves out of getting up and trying again. Like you say, children are ingrained in the fact that they have to try again. It's not they're not afraid of failing. It's only as you become conditioned, exposed to different tyrannies of life, that you then start to become affected by it. So I think that point is crucial. But going back to leadership, one of the chapters in your book alludes to leaders eating last, and that was something that spoke to me, because I always believed the contrary, and that's the popular belief, is that when you're the leader, you've taken all the risk, you've got the business, you need to make sure that you're looked after first, and then everybody else comes second. Why is it important that it's actually the reverse?
It stems from this idea from the United States Marines, where their officers eat last. And it's actually a thing recently that Simon Sinek has been talking about. It's been a kind of a hot topic now, as he's been researching what makes the US Marines the US Marines. But it does come from this idea of eating last. Like, I as a leader, I should be looking after my people, ultimately. I mean, if I'm the leader of my household, I've got me, I've got my wife, I've got my 2 kids, I might be seeing myself as a leader. But straight away then, if there was a famine with my household, I wouldn't be the one eating first. I would want my kids to eat first, and I want my wife to eat first, and I'd actually be eating last, because I want to make sure that they are nourished, and I would then take that. And I think that basic idea within family, sometimes we get lost within a corporate leadership idea, where it's all about me first, and we actually forget about our people. And I kind of cringe with it when I talk to CEOs, or I talk to business guys, and they always see themselves as the most important person in their business, kind of thing. And they've got the parking spot right outside, and they can arrive at any time, they can do what they want. And I kind of say, you know what, if every Wednesday you go and play golf, does your business run? Yes, it still runs. You're not the most important thing in the business. If all your staff went to play golf on a Wednesday, would your business run? It's like, no, because they actually keep it going. And it's the same way with me. I mean, right now, I've got a camp going on, but I am here. I can step away from camp, and I've got good staff who can run camp. But as a leader, I've got to understand that they are actually more important than I am. Because they are the ones that are actually keeping it going. The moment I've kind of got that mindset shift of, I need to understand who is the most important, which is right now my staff within a business environment, then I can start to look after them as much as I can. I'm going to start to, and the whole power dynamic starts to change. Instead of seeing myself as I'm the boss and I'm disconnected from everyone else, I now start to include. And I've always been fascinated with this idea of power. And what people would kind of misunderstand is that power is given and power can be taken away.
Absolutely.
And the moment you understand that you only got power for now, you will actually be more responsible with your power. The moment you think you got power forever, that's when you actually stand a better chance of losing your power quicker, and you do end up losing power. I mean, a couple of examples on that. If if I had to ask you to name the most powerful leaders on the planet in the year 2000, you'd probably come up with Mubarak, Saddam Hussein, George W. Bush, Tony Blair. These were some of the most powerful leaders that had literally the ability to decimate our planet. 24 years later, most people don't even know those names.
Yes.
They have no idea who that person is. So you literally gone from the most powerful, influential person on the planet to no one knows who you are within 24 years.
Yeah.
So there's this
Not
idea
even a
that,
generation.
Yes, not even a generation. So there's this idea that I've got power now, but next year I've got no power. I mean, I talk to grade 12s about this idea. So right now you see yourself as the most powerful grade in the school. And you are the most powerful grade in the school. You are the grade 12s. You've got it. Next year, security won't even let you in the gate because you would have left school and you've lost all your power. And there's this idea that when you understand that you have power, and all of us have influence, all of us have some form of power. I love it when I get a teenager at this point, they'll say, oh, but I'm only a 15-year-old teenager. What kind of power do I have? And I stop and say, hey, hold on. You know you've got the power to absolutely destroy another person's reputation or an institution's reputation. You've actually got a lot of power. But again, the moment you know that power can be lost, then you start to actually do better with your power. Because here's the thing about power. The moment you got it, you've got a tendency to abuse it. The moment you got it, you kind of want to, I mean, I've got power, and so I kind of want to get my staff to make me coffee or something. You got a tendency to abuse power. That's just the way power works. But if I had to ask you to think of the worst time of your life, chances are the story would include someone that abused their power. And if I had to ask you for a story about the best time of your life, something that really chances are to be someone that used their power to uplift you.
Yeah.
And when you understand this dynamic that I've got power for now, but tomorrow I might not have the power. Now I start to use my power a lot better. I start to become a lot more responsible. And here's the interesting thing. You actually end up getting more power. The moment you don't want the power, people entrust you with more power. You actually get more influence with it. And if you can start to look for opportunity to use your power to uplift people, people will start to trust you a lot more. You're not an evil tyrant. They actually see you as the hero in the story, and they kind of want to give you more power because they can entrust you with power. And so the idea of that officers eat last is, again, this idea of looking after those under me so that they are okay before I get there.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things, there's a unit within the police that I've done some leadership training with, and it's one of the most elite policing units in South Africa, and actually class within the world. And what I loved about when I got invited to give a talk to them on a leadership training program, so I got invited to run a leadership session. What I really enjoyed about this unit is that constables were sitting next to officers. All ranks were sitting in amongst each other. And when it came to question and answer time, they were chatting. There was still all respect within the ranks, but they were all almost equal at that moment in that way. And what I liked about the fact is that when I've done stuff with other places, like, no, I only deal with the managers, and I never get to talk, to other staff kind of thing. I do a leadership session. No, it's only the managers that come here. I don't get to do it with the general staff. And what fascinated me about this unit is that I was talking to the leaders, the officers, as well as the lower ranks. Both were getting the leadership lecture. It wasn't just for the officers, it was for the constables, as well. And corporations that I've really enjoyed working with is when, and I fully agree, there are going to be times that there are certain sessions that can only go with management. Yeah. I get that. But a lot of the times, the companies that really are dynamic, that kind of grow, are the guys that literally they include all their staff in the training, because they know that when this person gets promoted, they need to know they've got this leadership ability, so I can promote them. And if they do come in, they can straight away step into that role because they've actually already had a leadership training session.
Yeah.
They know what to do. So now you actually get a culture of learning, you get a culture of development, you get a culture of better, and then also your underlings as such understand what management is doing. They understand I now know why you do what you do, because I've had the same training, I've had the same understanding, and then these guys also get to understand it here. And again, the constables know what the captains, you get this idea that we understand each other. There's a lot more empathy for what's happening, and it grows. And I think a lot of people want to grab power, and they want to be the most important person in the room, the most important leader. But the more you try to hold on to it, the quicker you start to lose it.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of stories on that. I mean, if you think back to your top companies, before they became top companies, they loved you. They went out of their way to offer you service. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my dad would take me with all of my cents, 1s and 2 cents, in a jar, my kind of piggy bank. And the manager of the bank would actually come out and say, "Oh, welcome," and shake my hand, and "No, we'll get up." And he used to kind of help me count my money and put it into the bank account. Now when I go to a bank, I've got to pay counting fees.
Yeah.
And there is no manager there. It's on there's no personal development. You kind of realize when you were growing, I got the best service in the world, even as a kid. Now that you've got the top, all of a sudden I've gone down the wayside. No one really. And if you think of all the top companies that have kind of lost business, it's normally a company that at some point stopped looking after their customers.
Yeah.
At some point, they started treating their customers badly because they thought that they were too powerful, they were too big to fail. And someone else, if you won't look after your customers, someone else will look after your customers.
100%.
And someone else stepped in and offered better service, and that's how it started to grow. And if you think of any company around, all the companies we hate at the moment, and there's a couple, a couple of companies like, no one enjoys certain companies.
Yes.
And you think about, there was a time you actually loved that company. That was the best company ever. And now...
Yeah, it speaks to tie it all together. It speaks to having the power, losing it as well because you took it for granted, going into the leadership training where the corporate leadership training where it's worked very well is everybody's been able to then put themselves in the other person's shoes. So understanding the different levels and how it works within the business. And then as a result, therefore, what we spoke about earlier was accountability. So being able to take accountability for your own actions, and then the leadership that's involved with everybody that's within the organization. By putting everybody in that position, they're also more likely to get more yes men behind their causes and their projects, which comes back to right in the very beginning when we spoke about the basics of leadership. Dave, it's a wonderful way to finish this off, and we've tied it all together beautifully and bundled it and packaged it in the end. It's been wonderful to have you on the show once again for round 2. And sure, we keep going. Maybe we might have to
round 3 or round 4.
Dave's Corner. Dave's Corner and on the Expect Performance podcast. So I mentioned earlier in the previous episode, people know where to find you. I will attach all of that in the show notes as well. And I encourage people to reach out and to follow your journey and to hire your expertise as and when needed. So thank you very much, man.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Not so fast. It is such a cool feeling when I see that Spotify subscribers number increase on the weekly, when I see the number of people listening to the episodes going up, and it really makes a huge difference. Have you ever done something and you feel so good when you get rewarded by some positive feedback and you really feel like you're making a difference? That's what it means to me, and that's how I feel. And it goes a long way. If you like the show, share it and subscribe it. Thank you humbly, and I'll see you next week.